Hey folks, Mike Dawkins from Worldcast Anglers here with your Jackson Hole fly fishing forecast for the weekend of August 29th and 30th. We're staring down the barrel of the end of Angry August, and hopefully the dog days of summer. Fall is just sort of creepily coming by, and a couple little breaths of a weather pattern change or some cooler nights or something along those lines. But in honesty, I don't really have much different to report as from the past couple weeks. Some of these fishing reports in the end of August can be a little bit challenging for me just because we haven't had much in a conditional change to dictate a change in our fishing tactics or hatches or anything along those lines. Flows are about the same. Our weather has been about the same. We're sort of just in this limbo period before fall starts and summer hasn't ended. Today in Teton Valley, it's still pretty darn warm. We've got those low 80s. Our nights have been in the 50s, but look for that to change coming up in, our weekend and our 10-day that should sort of kickstart a couple different things in our fisheries around the greater Jackson Hole area. The two things I would keep in mind going into fishing this weekend is one, terrestrials. They're going to be your friend. Hoppers, beetles, and ants. They are plugging the gap in between our summer hatches finishing and our fall hatches beginning. The ranch, terrestrials, South Fork, snake, Teton, creeks. I'd fish some hoppers. It's going to be a little bit of an omnipresent message where those summer PMDs and things like that are sort of tapering off, if not tapered off. We're seeing some mahoganies or some blue wings, but it's still 80 degrees outside. Plug those gaps with those terrestrials. Be ready for that. The other one is weed growth. You're going to start to see a lot of some of this weed growth start to sort of kick loose. We're going to see a little bit of higher turbidity in a lot of our rivers around when we start to get some of these cooler days and cooler nights. And it's going to come into play, especially with your nymph rigs or those big dry dropper rigs that are going to get a little bit challenging with the weed growth. Most notably the Teton, the lower Henry's Fork. We're seeing that turbidity coming out of the South Fork of Palisades Reservoir since those flows are low, and we're seeing a bit of it on the snake with those higher flows. So think of those as you sort of go into, your fishing weekend of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Saturday, we've got, check this out, 65 and 48, thunderstorms all day. Be careful out there, pack your rain jackets. Don't be flying around, out there in the middle of the South Fork holding two big graphite fly rod, lightning rods. So be careful, but we're getting really excited about this weather change because it's going to be very refreshing to our fishery as well as sort of our mental state as anglers here in the August time period. So Saturday, 65 and 48 thunderstorms. Sunday, 66 and 40 with some more thunderstorms. And our 10-day looking, we've got a lot of temperatures in the low 70s. High 60s and our mid 40s for those lows. So it's exactly what we need to sort of kickstart fall and some things sort of going on. Look for those mahoganies and those betas to become more prolific. Maybe look for a shift of our fishing hours to move a little bit more into that midday period. Not, quite yet, but we're going to start transitioning to that with our longer nights and our shorter days sort of coming up. South Fork of the Snake, we saw a flow drop a couple days ago, 9,500 CFS coming out of Palisades Dam, 10,400 CFS there on the lower river. The South Fork, as I had mentioned, we're starting to see some turbidity with the low levels of Palisades Reservoir. So that SF1 and the beginning portion of SF2, we're starting, I would concentrate mostly on nymphing, big dry dropper fishing, rubber legs and black, orange and brown, a lot of Duracells, a lot of Perdigons, pheasant tails imitating those mahoganies, the bullet quill in Spanish bullet, especially in olive for the blue wing olives has been really good. And we're seeing a little increase in our streamer fishing. If you're up to it and you want to commit to it, we've seen some good fish landed on streamers as we sort of get that fall period sort of creeping in, but be aware of some of that turbidity on the upper section as well as the beginning of section 2. It starts to taper out there around section 3 and section 4. That clarity sort of starts to increase back up. The Snake in Jackson, we've got 5,000 CFS coming out of Jackson Lake Dam, 6,310 CFS on the lower river. Still high flows, still some moderate turbidity, and we're still sort of getting some of those challenging dry fly fishing conditions that we sort of would expect this time of year for the snake. Mutant stones, hoppers would be my dry fly fishing patterns that I would concentrate on, and then I would rotate in droppers, maybe some shallow nymph rigs and streamers with those rubber legs. Any of those tungsten pheasant tails, your favorite BWO nymph, starting to get some of those other hatches coming on. Not much of the hecuba yet, but I would expect that. We've been seeing that on some of our higher altitude creeks. So though I would think those would be right around the corner, as well as the mahoganies there and blue wing olives there on the snake. Teton here in the valley, 235 CFS around Driggs, 558 CFS on the lower river. Flows are very low, flows are very clear, and as I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of weed growth up here in the valley. What that happens to do on the Teton is it slows our water speed down and it increases our depth. It can make navigating some of the upper river stretches with with a drift boat, it can take longer. You can get caught up in some of those weed mats. It also creates some pretty good feeding lanes for fish, especially during good hatch periods of those leftover PMDs, mahoganies, some blue wing olives, especially coming up this weekend, and your terrestrials, your hoppers, your beetles, and your ants. The lower river is still holding on. Some of that, like Dam to Hog Hollow, it came online, it's offline, with these hotter days, lots of bright sun, but I would start throwing that into the mix, or that arrow, using that arrow in my quiver coming into this weekend, when we're having some of these days where we're barely going to reach almost, the mid 60s. Mahoganies, blue wing olives, maybe a hecuba here and there, and your hopper droppers as well, streamer fishing down there. The Henry's Fork, 705 CFS coming out of Island Park Dam, 1,160 CFS on the lower river. Similarly, we're starting to see some turbidity out of Island Park Dam due to low pool there, so be ready for that. And we're seeing some of that weed growth and some things in the Box Canyon plague, some of those nymph rigs. So you're going to have to check them or concentrate, maybe on some of those water types where, there's not as much sort of crap getting flushed through with those weeds and things like that. Still mostly a nymphing game or a big dry dropper game, and the streamer bite is sort of, on and off. The ranch, those conditions have been tough, the past, 5 to 7 days, especially with this bright sun and these really hot days. But this weekend looks prime for some mahoganies and some blue wing olives. If you get some warmer afternoons, I'd be ready with hoppers, beetles, the honey ants, those CDC water wasps, any stuff like that can be really good. The lower river, not much to mention there, but I definitely could throw that back into the mix, especially the warm river to Ashton stretches, lower mesa. Some of that has still been fishing well with dry dropper rigs and sort of classic freestone tactics and techniques. And then the Ashton, Ora, Vernon, Chester stuff has sort of been, right in that, dog days of summer, those conditions, a lot of weed growth, higher water temperatures, but this weekend would be one, if you're looking to sort of poke in and check something out new, that lower Henry's Fork would be right on my radar. I would maybe get up there early before, a bunch of people on the water or whatnot, and I'd get some first cracks at those fish with some streamers, especially with the brown trout just starting to think about doing their thing and getting a little aggressive for the fall period. We've still got lots of walk wading in Yellowstone National Park, lots of walk wading on our tributaries, Snake River tributaries, South Fork of the Snake tributaries, Palisades tributaries, all sorts of stuff, Flat Creek, Blacktail Ponds, Grays, Hoback. Like these are the sort of last days of summer, to jam in some of those little walk wade missions or little mini adventures with the backpack and go explore on a couple of things. So definitely take advantage of that. Fly Shop is still open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. Come in, reload, get ready for the sort of second half, the final countdown of summer and the beginning of fall. We're getting ready for our fall sort of Labor Day sale that's going to start up on the 3rd of September. More details coming to y'all about that later. So have a great weekend. Pack the rain gear, do the rain dance, enjoy it. We're all going to be sort of smiling in the Fly Shop just for this change in this weather pattern, and you should be too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again.